I was woken up by my brother. Told me to turn on the TV, and he told me that, he asked me where my parents were because they were in Manhattan at the time, and I didn't know what hotel they were in, and he didn't either, and it was a bit of a panic because I had actually spoken to them on the phone the day before, and my mom had said that they had planned on going to the World Trade Center on the 11th.
I called my sister at work because our parents were doing a tour of the Washington, D.C. area, so that was of some concern to me at the time. So I called my sister to try to get my father's cell phone number.
So I was freaking out, and so I called some really good friends.
2 days before the attacks, I had sent my ex-boyfriend a letter in hopes of reconciling, and my first thought when I heard about it was, I'm really glad I sent him that letter, because if we're going to war and we're all going to die, at least he knew that I still loved him.
I called my wife from my car. I was on my way to work.
And 2 days later we were back together.
Spent most of the day in a weird two-person bubble with Tom. Well, three-person bubble, me and Tom and the television. Taking in information and freaking out.
I just needed someone to talk to. Fortunately, about half hour later, my parents somehow managed to get a phone call through and tell me that they were okay, that they overslept.
I mainly just watched it on TV.
I was in New York, and so as soon as I found out what had happened, then kind of everyone phone, I need the phone, and so it was this long line of people waiting to use the phone.
I called my mom.
Tried to call my mom, but it was impossible to get through to New York. But my sister said she'd talk to her, and she was fine.
I was kind of hesitant to call her because she's really religious, and I just wasn't ready for all that.
I called everyone. I was on the phone all day. I spent most of the morning trying to reach my friends. I had an old friend who actually had disowned this year for standing me up multiple times in New York from college, who was working in the Trade Center. I called all of our mutual friends to see if he was okay, and he was.
My mom woke me up and said, Sarah, hon, you better turn on the news. So I turned on the news and I watched TV for about 4 hours, and then I went to work, and we just kind of all sat around at work listening to the news and watching TV and being silent.
And I called my friend Josh in New York. He was the first guy I called because I was petrified that he would have been in the rubble.
I actually woke my boyfriend up out of bed to tell him that people were attacking New York because I was just getting up and going to work, and so he was sleeping, and it felt like, War of the Worlds, and I absolutely could not believe it was happening, and I thought it was a hoax, because first I heard Howard Stern talking about it, and I was like, that's fucked up. So then and he was so serious, and I was waiting for the joke to end, and so I turned on the TV because it wasn't ending.
Called my mother later in the day just to talk to her about what was going on, see what she was thinking.
I didn't really need to, or necessarily want to, talk to anybody yet, because I hadn't fully processed what I really thought about what was going on, because it seemed like something out of a movie, definitely like out of some weird action superhero film where there's an arch villain blowing up the world, and I couldn't necessarily decode it, or it didn't make a whole lot of sense at the time.
Dean Martin.
Dean Martin.
Dean Martin. Matt Helm.
Oh, God, Dean Martin.
Dean Martin.
Dean Martin.
Jerry Lewis.
Dean Martin.
His early stuff.
Jerry Lewis.
Dean Martin.
Frank Sinatra. No!
Jerry Lewis.
No, because not Jerry Lewis anymore because of what he said about ladies not being funny.
Jerry Lewis.
Dean Martin.
Dean Martin.
In Airport.
Jerry Lewis.
Dean Martin.
Dean Martin.
I don't even know anything about Dean Martin. But Jerry Lewis is so fucking goofy, I can't.
Is Jerry Lewis Jewish?
Dean Martin.
Jerry Lewis.
That night I went to see Belle and Sebastian.
I saw Belle and Sebastian.
I went to the Belle and Sebastian show.
I went to the Belle and Sebastian concert.
I had tickets to see Belle and Sebastian,
We went to see the Belle and Sebastian show.
It was weird all day long. I thought to myself, I can't go see a band. I mean, it seems so frivolous.
It was comforting and scary at the same time to be with so many other people.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I mean, who knew what the hell was going to happen? I mean, the Rosen Theater's right next to the big building on Burnside.
I was worried, you get 2,000 kids in a room with cardigan sweaters and it gets sweaty pretty quickly.
And it was great. I'm glad I went. It was very cool to be out with all those people. And there was a good sort of camaraderie, and everyone obviously was thinking about what had happened that day, including the band.
Stuart had some lovely things to say to the kids, the American people.
Jonathan Richman actually opened for Belle and Sebastian, and that was a stunning feeling to listen to Jonathan Richman, who was obviously processing the information, but still being Jonathan Richman.
Just to be with all these people, it almost felt like everything was normal again. And then they open with the bird song "Turn, Turn, Turn," which they'd obviously just learned because they were reading it off of, scraps of paper, and they didn't do it so well, but it was just emotionally. I mean, it was the first song that came out and played it, and man, I just had chills down my spine. It was amazing.
And then afterwards I went and had some drinks with a couple friends at Holman's, and same thing, everyone was just crowded around the television watching the horrific footage, but a very nice sense of community that I wouldn't have had if I had stayed home.
Everybody was really emotional. There were people up and down the bar crying, and we had the TV on for 3 or 4 days. We had the TV on. It was really difficult. It was really difficult because here I am trying to do my job, and people are drinking, and I work at Holman's, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was horrible.
It was Tuesday, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was by myself, yeah. The maids in the hotel told me about it.
Yeah, I had band practice.
I was supposed to work, but I canceled it, and I ended up staying at home watching the news on TV.
I didn't feel like going back to my apartment by myself to spend the night by myself, so I just did what I could.
That morning we woke up and we kind of sat around and watched the TV for a really, really long time, and just kind of found that we were just burying ourselves further and further into the ground. We were all just sitting there very heavy, and decided to walk to go get food.
And we drank whiskey. We drank Maker's Mark on the rocks, and also some beers.
The store that we were walking to had just closed, so we didn't have. It was out in the country. There wasn't really any place nearby.
I was pretty much a mess that day.
So we had pizza. It was the only place that was open. We had pizza.
Burgers.
Cheeseburgers.
Soup. I make really good soup.
Chocolate.
Cabbage,
Spaghetti.
lentil.
Recently discovered this beautiful borscht in the joy of cooking. I can't really cook. I'm learning.
Borscht,
Pizza.
barley, vegetable.
It was nice going home in October and having some of my mom's fried chicken.
Chicken noodle. I have many.
It used to be those animal cookies, the pink and white animal cookies with the little sprinkles on them.
Today it was lasagna and chocolate chip cookies.
I like to go to Arby's and do the 5 for $5. That's 5 roast beefs for $5.
Top ramen, beef.
Top ramen.
Well, probably chocolate covered almonds. But that'd probably change tomorrow.
Slices of green apple and brie on bread.
To chocolate covered grasshoppers.
Mashed potatoes,
I would say mac and cheese.
chips and salsa.
Macaroni and cheese, I think, made by my mom with about 5 sticks of butter.
Nacho cheese sauce. I don't know, how many do you want? Almost everything. Beer.
Beer.
I could eat a bunch of that.
The potato, in any way, shape, or form. The potato is the perfect food. Hash browns, French fries, mashed potatoes, baked potatoes, potato chips, potato pancakes. Oh, yeah, that's my comfort food. I love the potato.
Well, you're a little young to remember this, but of course, when our friends the Nazis burned down the Reichstag, they blamed it on an unpopular minority in their nation, and then they declared a state of emergency, and then they started suspending civil rights left and right, and then, next thing you know, they had a captive corporate state in which they convinced people to pull themselves out of their horrible economic situation by buying.
Civil liberties, loss of civil liberties, really more than anything.
I'm really disturbed by the restrictions on our constitutional freedoms that seem to be taking place daily by the government in terms of listening to people's conversations with their attorneys and
Probably just not being able to travel as freely within the country, and even more so out of the country, and having it become a really big ordeal.
restricting people's right to travel and things like that.
I won't be able to travel.
I'm really kind of afraid that the Northern Alliance is going to do, kind of a mass execution. That's my biggest concern.
Future attacks will come on innocent citizens of this country.
What do you do? Imprison thousands of people? How do you deal with them? And there's so much hatred there that, I'm worried about a mass execution.
I guess I'm just worried that Americans will maybe embrace their patriotism more than embracing sort of a universal brotherhood. Not that I don't think mankind is wired to be a peaceful animal ever, really, and I think that different races and different cultures will always be in conflict.
I think for about probably 6 weeks after September 11th, I was kind of continually worried every day, and particularly the first couple weeks that I was back from New York, every time I drove to work over the Burnside Bridge, and I saw a lot of the tall buildings in downtown Portland, which is essentially kind of a town in comparison to New York. It made me a little scared every day, I think, just seeing those buildings and being reminded.
I'm not so much afraid of death, or I'm afraid of dismemberment mainly. But
I'm most concerned about what I've always been concerned about, the future, basically.
I'm concerned over my glee when another city falls. I'm concerned that I have those positive emotions, but at the same time I do experience them.
I don't like to think of people being killed, and I don't want more people being killed, more reasons for people to kill people. Think about that.
Even though obviously people are being killed, and there's no real way to spin that.
I think the thing that I'm most afraid of is that we collectively as a society are going to put the blanket back over our head after we win, and terrorism is eradicated, and, we have Osama captured or whatever, and then we're going to go back to not knowing anything about what's going on with current events.
But for the most part, I've been avoiding talking to people about the politics and all the crap.
We Americans, on the other hand, do things like blow up our own battleships in Havana Harbor, or we stage fake incidents in the Gulf of Tonkin, precipitating a war in Vietnam. We do everything we can to provoke the Japanese, and even know that an attack is coming at Pearl Harbor, but do nothing to stop it, sacrificing some of our own so we can achieve our greater goal, whatever the hell that was.
Protesters and fraud.
It just felt like in a very short span of time, the world had changed and the country had changed, and everything that I always thought about being an American and living kind of in an impenetrable universe changed. And that was upsetting in itself. It was just like being in an elevator and your stomach, elevator dropping and your stomach kind of falls out of space.
I was afraid for a couple months. I think it caused me to reevaluate mortality yet again, but I've done it so many times now that I'm kind of used to that.
And in this particular case, the only person who stood to profit from an attack on America was George Bush and his administration, which had been highly unpopular and had not even been able to make themselves more popular by sending people money. And now, if you recall, the things that we were worried about before all this, things like should we get into the Social Security lockbox, should we drill in Alaska, a number of things like that, they have given him all that and more. Happy, happy, lucky man who falls eternally upward and will die a hero and become a god.
George Harrison.
Ringo Starr. John Lennon.
George.
John.
John. Really love John, even though he's a bastard.
I don't know. I've never thought about it. I love them all equally.
I don't have one.
Mostly John.
John.
I like Paul because he's sort of the underdog in a sense, because everyone thinks he's a, major cheeseball.
Paul McCartney.
John.
George.
Stu Sutcliffe.
I don't have one.
Probably John. Sort of a badass.
John. I don't particularly have one of them as a favorite. They're all great.
Maybe you should say, who's my favorite Rolling Stone? Ringo. Because he's still alive.
I really do love them all equally. Yeah.
I've indefinitely postponed my resolve to quit smoking.
I'd like to regain my time management skills.
I'm certainly drinking more. The thought process being, I can always go into rehab or start going to the gym after this whole thing blows over, but eat, drink, and be merry.
I have a strong feeling that the U.S. government, which is always about that far from a police state anyway, has finally gone over the edge, and it is one now.
I mean, it's the first time I ever felt even remotely patriotic, which is a big switch.
What the hell does that mean? Make myself a target? Join a protest movement that will mean utterly nothing?
Everything was kind of hypothetical. Like, I thought, well, if push came to shove, I probably would go to war, because I never imagined anyone really, attacking the U.S. It was so far removed from all the hot spots in the world, so.
This kind of actually put my life sort of into a holding pattern, because it kind of disrupted everything, and you almost can't feel like you can move on and do things, especially with the economy and everything, until they kind of resolve it.
For me, and I've noticed on even New York-based late-night talk shows, which I watch a lot of, that whole feeling of the whole melancholy of I think those feelings have kind of worn off. People are being funny again, and people are kind of getting over it, and you can bring it up, and everybody's oh yeah, whatever, for a little bit. But I think that those feelings have kind of worn off.
Right after it happened, everyone seemed so intent on making things meaningful, and I thought, you know what, we're not going to have any more stupid sitcoms, and we're not going to have dumb arguments and road rage, and that seemed to last for about 3 weeks.
Although it's difficult to see from the outside, I'm less motivated by things that I now think of as kind of facile and not important.
I went to the movies last night, and there's this Schwarzenegger movie, about terrorists that this movie will never come out because it's horrible, and it's fucking coming out in a month.
I've definitely tried to connect with a lot of old friends, and I certainly have sort of realized how much I appreciate the friends that I have, and my family.
I felt surprisingly in love with life and more free and open and more attached to whatever creative impulses I find in myself. They've always been submerged and I've been trying to dig them up my whole life, and I feel like that struggle got a kick in the pants from the end of the world approaching. And every time I talk to my friends, I tell them I love them now, which of course feels great.
Okay, this is kind of a special answer because it's a gay man who wouldn't sleep with me, but I can sleep with whoever I want, right?
Al Pacino in Dog Day Afternoon.
Frank O'Hara in a nutshell. Easy.
Lot's wife. And I never really think of historical figures in a sexual way, so I'm gonna keep it current.
That guy Chris from NSYNC is pretty hot, actually.
Tyra Banks.
Yeah, I'd sleep with Einstein. What the hell? Or Ozzy. No, Einstein.
Maybe Brigitte Bardot.
Bridget Fonda. I'd have to say Kate Winslet.
Kate Blanchett. I'd probably like to sleep with her.
I think Fonzie.
I don't know her name, but not June Carter Cash, but her mother.
I don't know why, but Baryshnikov kind of intrigues me.
Jesus Christ. I would love to talk to that guy the next morning, just see what he had to say.
Myself.
Linda Harrison. Nova from Planet of the Apes.
Grace Kelly.
I want to say Brad Pitt, but I think the drummer of Def Leppard when he had 2 arms.
Oh, that's easy. Elizabeth Taylor.
I would have liked to sleep with Napoleon, but after he was dead. Can I tell a story about the 11th?
Yeah.
Might you be able to use or not. The day of, everybody in the United States who had a television, I think, pretty much spent the day glued in front of it because even though there wasn't any new information, people were waiting for that and waiting for, I guess, some kind of sucker or reality check or whatever they were using the television for. And of course, most of the major stations were preempted by CNN coverage. And after seeing the planes crash into the buildings 40 times, we were kind of freaking out at our house and decided to switch stations to find just something more cheery, something that wasn't about death. And, we have cable, so we went to Animal Planet, full of cute stuff. And then and the sound was down, and I was like, see, Tom, look at that tiny kitten. Look at that is the smallest, cutest kitten. And there's somebody kind of touching the kitten, and it was very still, and it was asleep. But then the vet pulled the sheet over the kitten, and in fact the kitten was dead. And Tom congratulated me on finding the one thing that could possibly be more depressing than the terrorist attacks: dead kitten. The end.